Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Hero's Journey podcast, a sacred space where you can kiss your doubt goodbye and embark with confidence and love on your quest to become the hero on your journey back to wholeness. Together with brilliant minds, we venture into the unknown to revive and mend what is torn and to patch what is missing. Today, I'm really thrilled to introduce you to Aisha. I first got to know I through the vibrant youth community centered around the work by Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And our paths have crossed before. We once been together in Berlin. We met there. And I think you were in Turkey as well. I think that's where I actually met you the first time, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. On the week-long retreat in Turkey. And yes, her story is very inspiring. As many other people, her journey has started with health challenges, overcoming health challenges, including food sensitivities and a quite restrictive diet for her as well, similar like Punya. And after healing these issues, how to say, the healing journey has continued and she has figured out deeper layers of transformation and discovering her purpose, redefining her career, and unraveling subconscious programs. And now she's dedicating her life to helping others to navigate their own path to healing. So, I would like to hand the word to I. Let's dive in and explore the remarkable journey of Aisha and how her experiences, both the beautiful and the challenging, have shaped her into the transformative force she is today.
Thank you so much for that intro, MZ. That was beautiful.
You're welcome. I'm super excited for this episode because I've been what I've been not watching you, but like we haven't been in contact regularly, but I've met you in Berlin and I've met you during the retreat, and then after the retreat and while we were in Berlin, you were still studying art and just like building up your business related to art, and now it's like something completely else. So I'm so excited what has been going on and just to learn a lot from you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, I'll start from the very beginning. 'Cause, yeah, so I had a big health journey, and then since then I've been on a big like purpose and career journey, which
Hmm.
is what I help a lot of people with today. But from the beginning, so when I was around 22, I started having all these health challenges. A lot of it was focused around digestive issues. So I just thought I was like getting food poisoned all the time, but then it became a
Oh.
thing that would happen week after week. And I'm like, why am I just like eating out and then feeling super nauseous and like literally throwing it all up in the middle of the night? Yeah, so it's
Oh.
really bizarre. And I went down the rabbit hole of like, the matter to matter things. So like diets, traditional medicine, supplements, all these kinds of things related to gut health and gut issues. And that was like my life for the next 3.5 years, essentially. Health became my number one priority. Like I couldn't even really think honestly that much of my career aspirations because I was so focused around health, right? I was like, why
Hmm.
can't I heal? Why can't I heal? It was stabilized by the diets. I had some other symptoms that stabilized it. Like, I was fatigued all the time, and then I just felt like my immune system was shot, and the diets definitely helped that. But the actual thing where I couldn't eat the foods I wanted to, um, kind of plagued me for years. I basically was on this like super strict, basically raw vegan diet. So I was
Wow.
carrying around like a salad all the time, and I was just like really scared to travel. And that's one of the big travel and freedom is like a big part of my values. Um, so that was just like really hard and limiting for me in a lot of ways. And so 3.5 years in, that's when someone told me about Joe Dispenza. Immediately I was like, this is a freaking missing piece to what I've been doing. I did not think about the mind aspect at all. And I was very just
Hmm.
not aware of my emotions. So um, the moment I started like learning all this information about the mind body connection and like motions and like frequency and all that kind of and like epigenetics, like the science part, I was like, holy crap, like I am so in lack about food and health. Like I'm so worried about my next meal. Like I could literally almost feel the anxiety in my stomach area, like in my third center, because I was just thinking about what the heck I was going to eat next all the time and how it would influence how I felt, right? So like my
Mm,
external reality determining how I felt inside. And I was like, wow, I'm creating this cycle. And it was like so crazy to me because when I first started having my food allergies, like I was eating meat, right? But suddenly in
mm-hmm.
the middle, I became allergic to meat because I read some information that meat was like harmful.
Oh
And I was
my
like,
God, that was
I know,
instantly.
it's crazy. It's crazy. And I was like, wait, wow, I literally created my meat allergy. Like, because like I never had it in the first place. Um, so yeah, there's just like so much evidence that this was something I that started with a lot of stress. So when it started, like I was in a pretty toxic relationship. I just graduated, so I was like making my way in this like new adult world. So there's like a lot of stressful things going on, and yeah, I just didn't realize that all that stress was affecting my body. Like I think a lot of us are so conditioned towards stress that we don't even realize when we are in stress, right?
Yeah.
So that was me. I was just like, this stress feels normal. Like these emotions feel normal until I was so aware of them that they weren't normal. So yeah, so I did the Dr. Joe work, meditated like 2 to 3 hours a day for probably the first 3 to 6 months, and then I completely healed everything within that time period. And
Wow.
honestly, yeah, I knew I was healed 3 months in because um, suddenly my health wasn't my first priority anymore. I was like, I know I'm gonna be healed. And like 3 months in, all my like not all my symptoms had like disappeared. There were still things that were like irritating me and like making me feel nauseous. But I just knew that if I continued this work, like I would be healed. And it happened like 3 months later. So basically, after that, like my entire attention turned onto career, right? Because I was in this 9 to 5 marketing job, very traditional path. From my upbringing, like I'm from the Bay Area, so like, you study something STEM related. I studied business, and then you just like go get a job somewhere and like it's really stable and you have like this, like a high paying tech job. And I just knew it was not what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, um, I was starting to get really into illustration and I was like really going for it. But I was going towards it from a place of ego. So
Mm,
it was more of like external validation. I was like, a digital artist on Instagram trying to get a lot of likes and followers. And I just remember so clearly, like me feeling so excited when, like my reel would blow up or like my picture would get a lot of likes, and then me feeling so disappointed if that didn't happen.
mm, mm-hmm.
So again, my external reality was still being controlled by I sorry, my internal reality was still being controlled by the external, right? And ultimately it led to like this arm injury from burning out, from drawing too much. And I think it was also
Wow.
the emotional aspect. Yeah. So my body is just like so freaking intelligent.
It is. It is
Yeah.
clearly, it clearly tells you what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. And I think it was that era was a blessing though, because I just realized that like, oh, I like this art thing so much better than my 9 to 5. I finally felt like I had like a passion at least that I could like
Mm-hmm.
look forward to, and like almost like a glimmer of hope of like, oh, actually there's a lot of people out here who are doing this full time or like doing some sort of online business full time. And I think that's what I really, really wanted. But again, I was so controlled by the algorithm. My art just looked like everyone else's. I was just drawing fan art. I was
Mm-hmm.
drawing stuff for the algorithm. So it just really didn't feel like me. And I think that all contributed towards like the burnout. So
Mm,
I took a long break, and then that's when the Dr. Joe stuff happened, actually. Healed myself. And then I was doing a bunch of like money mindset stuff, and I was just like, like I really feel like like my time is worth more than my job right now. Like I am wasting my
mm,
time here. I remember I had this conversation with my manager, and at that point I'd been coasting, which was great. But then like when I had that convo with her, she was like, "Yeah, Q1's coming up. Like, let's set up your goals. Like, let's really get you towards like, I don't know, it's like product marketing manager or like even like getting on the product team. Like, this is all tech shit."
Mm,
So over it at this point. I was like, no, I absolutely don't want to go into like product marketing or product, which is like
mm-hmm.
it's like the hype thing in tech. And I also don't want to work more than I am right now to move towards these goals that absolutely don't matter to me. And I just like knew at that point that it was time to quit. So I quit. And um, yeah, honestly, the time after that was very difficult. And I think it's because I wasn't super grounded in my purpose, right? I'm still glad that I did it. And I think it's because I had such a solid, a meditation practice, a nervous system regulation practice, and like this already deep faith in myself because of my healing,
Mm-hmm.
um, that I was able to make it work and make things happen and, like make the money work. Um, but I was also still like confused by this whole like career thing, this whole money thing too. And in
Yeah.
hindsight, the difference between the career stuff and the health stuff was that I felt absolutely worthy to be healed. Like there was no qualm about that. I was like, yeah, I should be freaking healthy. Like, and there was no like emotional, like I could feel that frequency of health so clearly, right? I didn't have any guilt or shame or fears around being healthy. But when it came to,
Ah,
yeah, but when it came to having a lot of money or like having a personal brand or having a lot of visibility or having this like amazing career where like I'm a badass, um, there's a lot of fear around that, right? Because then you have to put yourself out there. You have to do things that are new. You have to like embody this version of you that's like a CEO or like someone who
mm,
can handle a lot of money. And I didn't realize that at that point. So for basically 2 years, like I really struggled with that concept. And I think it was also tied to me not getting really clear on my purpose at that point because
oh
I
yeah.
thought it was art, right? But it wasn't. Like I was meant to transmit this message to people of like how to transform their external reality through their internal reality. And I was doing that through my art, but it was always through this very like sideways manner, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I felt like I almost had to force that art piece in first. And I think like
Mm-hmm.
as a multi-passionate, I call myself like a multi-passionate, multi-talented person.
Mm,
It becomes very confusing because you're like, shit, I'm like good at these things, but does it mean I should be doing that? And I think that's the way I felt with art. Like I definitely had a lot of talent around it. And in grad school too, which I went to grad school for art and technology for a year, and it was really fun, and I tried all these new things, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at coding too. Like, does that mean I should do this?
mm,
That was just like I think all around really confusing. Because once I graduated, and I was like looking into entering those industries, right, and like creating starting a creative studio or something like that. I was like, wait, actually, like this doesn't matter to me as much as really helping people transform. Like that's my
mm,
real goal. And yes, I am doing it with my art at a certain level, but like it's not to the depth that I wanted to. And also from a business perspective, right? Like if you do something as a service, let's say like a creative project as a service, then it's entirely more focused on the creativity part or like the creative direction, the building 3D environment or like whatever the skill is, like the technical artist role. And I was like, I don't actually want to be using these skills for anything but my own personal projects. It was
mm,
really hard for me to go all in on a business around that. And even this year, when I was seriously thinking about it, and when I was like, okay, I need to get real about making this business profitable, I was like, people basically do it through like marketing strategy, right? Like networking, social media, all that kind of stuff. I was like, wow, I have no desire to do any of that. Like, I don't want to
mm,
go to these gaming conferences and like, I don't really want to go to these tech art shows. I'd rather go to a freaking personal development conference or like a meditation retreat. And that was a aha moment for me because I was like, wow, I am totally like focusing on the wrong thing here. So that was earlier this year. And it really came in these kinds of little steps. So after I um, graduated grad school, I immediately kind of got this like freelance gig and, made my 10K month. And then I was so burned out after. I was
Oh,
like literally, I was burned out for like 2 months, probably at least. And I was like, why does like this feel like a pattern to me? Like, I think there's a pattern repeating here, you
mm,
know? And it was the same arm injury, which is like super interesting. That, was from when I did drawing in the first place. So I really was reevaluating, and the only thing I felt like doing at the time was writing about my feelings. So I ended up writing these like 10 Medium articles, which came out of me like this. Like it was the most effortless thing ever. Like it felt so natural to me, and people really, really resonated with them. And I was like,
mhm.
wow, this is really cool. I should start a newsletter. And then I didn't do it. And again, this is all hindsight, right? I can now see the fears and the resistance that I had towards doing that basically were stopping me from creating abundance like those entire 2 years, right?
Wow,
Um, yeah, and now I know
interesting.
that. Now I know that after I got clear on my purpose and like literally like did shadow work, did inner child stuff, did like, dug into my subconscious, now I realize that. But at that time I didn't, so I stopped. Um,
But it also can be super confusing too, because the fear is just like also creating a lot of confusion. So you look at it, you fear a lot of fear, and then the question comes up, well, is this meant for me? And maybe it's not meant for me. I mean, I wanted to do this and now I'm doing this and now it feels so scary and just like full of fear. Maybe I should not do it. Or like how was that process for you to really unravel it? Like if you really confront with like deeper or just like very fundamental subconscious programs. I think worthiness is also a big one for a lot of people, but also around money. Like, how do you discern? How do you discern what is you, what is not you, what is for you, what is not for you, and how to change that? Because fear is also a natural emotion. Fear is not all bad. So what I found myself is sometimes being very confused about this fear. Like, what are you trying to tell me now?
yeah, yeah, that's such a great question. I think first of all, it's like get really clear on what your purpose is, right? And that's a combination of like what you want your impact to be, what your gifts are, and also what your values are. And your values aren't just based off of your skills, it's based on the lifestyle that you want to live, right? The type of life
Mm-hmm.
that you want to create. And I think that's like a big thing that's missing for a lot of people. Like, for example, if I went that creative studio route, I basically would have been working another 9 to 5 when my number one value is freedom. So that's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely the wrong business for me to go after, or like it would have to be
Mm,
built in a really specific way, if that makes sense. Um,
mm,
so I think it's like you always have to honor your your lifestyle and your values and your purpose, or else you're not going to have that motivation to push through the fears, right? Which is a whole nother thing. I would say that's like step two. So it's like step
mm-hmm.
one, get super clear on your purpose. Like, what are you here to do? What lights you up? What actually gives you energy, right? And then like think about the opposite. What's draining your energy? What work do you feel is just pointless, like in your life right now? Like, what in
Mm-hmm.
your life is not reflecting your values? And then you have to begin to start to change those things. Like, you have to set boundaries. And like the more you practice this and the more you do that, the more clear you'll be on like what the thing you want to be doing actually is and what isn't. Because like your energy doesn't lie. If it's not the thing you want to be doing, you're gonna feel drained. You're gonna
Yeah.
feel like even the outcome won't feel exciting to you. I think that's a big part.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like also if you're not doing something for like a bigger picture or I think a higher purpose, it becomes difficult to get that energy because
Oh,
it's like
for sure.
Yeah, because it's like purely an ego desire, right? Like money, fame, all that kind of
Yeah. How did you
stuff.
identify? Because I'm currently also navigating some deeper subconscious beliefs, and what I discovered about myself is like, for instance, the current job position. I mean, there's a balance. I'm responsible. I have to be greater than my outer environment, so I can also not let my current job position let my mood drown or just like my emotions drown. I need to be independent. Like this in here should be independent from everything externally. But then I also noticed that I started blaming myself if it doesn't make me as happy as I expected it to be. Or there was this confusion happening. Like the job was getting like kind of, yeah, it's okay to be there. Like actually, I learned a lot. So it was not, I'm not completely in lag anymore. But then I also noticed like if something doesn't work out, I blame myself like, oh, my energy was off or it was because of me. I wonder how if you also encountered like very
Yeah.
sabotaging belief system or patterns, behavioral patterns that kept you where you at. And I know getting clear, it also takes some, at least for me, it took some time. Like I think now I have a clearer intention of what I want my life to look like. However, I never lived a life like that. And then, how did you make these steps or this transition to really making different choices? And then, how did you prepare yourself and like your mind to really embody this new identity? Because thinking differently and feeling differently, I usually consider it if you really feel differently, you're more you tend more to make different choices, but keeping that state up in the current environment that you're currently in. Like I'm interested how you tackled that challenge, how you
Yeah,
overcame that challenge.
totally, totally. So I think this is such a big topic, especially among spiritual people, right? Because we're all like, oh yeah, change your energy, change your life. But there's a totally a bridge missing. There's a gap between like how the energy actually changed your life. It's through action. I know what people don't want to hear this. It's through action. So like in your situation, like how many boundaries have you set, right? How have you stood up for your self-worth? How much have you actually communicated like, oh, this is what I want to be doing? And like, can you make this job more like this because that like I can serve and provide value in that way a lot better. And if they don't respect that boundary, then like you gotta like find something else or like find another role and actually take the action to do that. And of course, like the mindset stuff is part of this, like believing in yourself that you can find another role and that there is somewhere great out there for you. But until you really, and I think that's what embody is, right? Until you really take those 5D emotions and thoughts of like, oh, I love my job and I'm so worthy and etc. And then you actually bring it down to the 3D and you start to act as a person who really thinks that, like you will stay in the same place. And I see this happen to a lot of spiritual people, including myself, for like a long time, because I kept settling in these different projects. Like I noticed myself grasping at these projects because, I thought they'd bring me somewhere, but one of the collaborators just like didn't respect my time. Some of the topics were just not exactly what I want to do. So those were clearly things that I needed to let go and set boundaries around.
Mm,
I clearly also needed to take action if I actually want to create business. So when I got really serious about that, like that was an aha moment to me, I think. And there were some other parts in the middle that got me more clear on that. But yeah, I always emphasize the action because a lot of times you won't feel ready, honestly. Like if you feel ready, actually, you're not going to quantum leap. In order to quantum leap, you have to feel not ready, and then you have to do it anyways. That is like
mm,
a big thing. Like you do things with courage, you do things with bravery, and then you're going to quantum leap. Yeah.
mm. Wow, thank you. That is super interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I, I like when we shortly go back to your health journey, compared to your career journey, you said you had a sense of like worthiness, like of course, like I'm gonna heal, like everybody should be healthy, like it's something biological. When it comes to career, it can be sometimes like I don't know, it's not really something material that you can grasp. Well, health is either, but probably because it's in our body, sometimes we can. It is easier for us to heal something in health. Um, and then probably also because we accept that we cannot change our biology ourselves. Like we can with like you put out the intention and then you let it go because you cannot go with your mind into like with your analytical mind and be like do something now. You have to let it happen. So how was that sending like having the intention and then letting go like in a career because we are so prone, I feel it in myself these days because I'm looking for a new home and there's just so much that I can control, but the rest I simply cannot control. And how do you deal with that fear? Or how did you ground back yourself? Because the tendency to do more or to really like get out and grind harder is really, really high because we just haven't
Mm.
been taught differently. So how have you been dealing with that challenge?
Yeah, that's also such a great question. I think for me, like you have to be, I think, being really aware of my own thought patterns and my own kind of like patterns of tending to do too much, right? Or overthink things is really important. And like your emotions will often be an indicator of this because instead of inspired, you'll feel like it's like a, what do you call it? It's just like a pain or like, it's like too much or you feel this like sense of hopelessness. And usually it's because you're overthinking things or you're trying to be a perfectionist around
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's like, and there's a lot of obvious actions that we can take that we just don't. Like we have this like intuition and like intuitive message to take and then we don't do it. And I think part of the stress is from that. Like I think there definitely is a situation when you're like doing too much and you're kind of spinning your wheels, but there's also a stress from like, you not doing anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like, and I get it's kind of like two different patterns, I would suppose. If you're having the stress from not doing anything, like ask yourself, where is this anxiety and where is this feeling? Like, what is it telling me to address? Like, is it my safety in terms of finding this home? Um, is it pushing me to just like, just post a message in a Facebook group or something? And then you just got to go out and do it because it probably won't take you that long anyways. And then if you're in the overdoing pattern, you should look at like what are the results that you're creating from overdoing? Like, is it actually moving you towards the goal that you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times it's not. It's like a lot of times you're literally doing for the sake of like covering up an insecurity within
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So like
Mm-hmm.
that was me in the fall. I was doing a bunch of unpaid projects, right? Like that wasn't moving me towards anywhere really. They're not only were they unpaid, they were like projects that weren't really, really in the niche that I wanted to be in. So it's like I had to get real with myself. Like, do I really want to be doing these projects? No, right? Um, yeah, and just like really thinking about if these actions are moving you towards your real goal or
Mm-hmm.
not.
Yeah. That sounds very good. How did you keep that mindset stable? Like what did you do apart from meditation, on catching yourself during the day, especially at the beginning where anxiety might be like a bigger part of your life, or like at least when you do that. How did you find grace and compassion for yourself if you were not able to change immediately the way you wanted to? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so let me go back a little bit to basically when I was like figuring all this stuff out. So basically, I was like writing these articles. I was like in this kind of like burnout cycle. And I had the opportunity to do an art exhibition, a group art exhibition in New York. And it was kind of like one of my first larger exhibitions. And when I was preparing for that, I literally had like a rock bottom, dark night of the soul moment. I like injured my leg. I had no idea what I was going to exhibit for the project. None of it was done. And it was like 2 months away. And I
Mm-hmm.
had like basically not promised, but I like said I would do this like highly technical augmented reality project. And it was a personal project from, funnily enough, those 10 medium articles that I wrote. So it's about rest and worthiness. And I just, at that moment, like that's when I knew I had this self worth thing that I needed to address because I had so much anxiety around meeting other people's expectations, being compared to other artists because the residency I was in had a lot of like amazing artists who had careers for like 10 years or something, and I'm like new. A lot of imposter syndrome and just like fear if I would able to complete it or not. So that's when I really started digging into like the root of all of it. And I think another thing with the health, and this is different for everyone. Some people have challenges with health, some people have challenges with money, some people have challenges with relationships, and like vice versa. Other things can be really easy for them. So I wouldn't say career is like a big thing for everyone. But for me, it really started from like my childhood, and the health stuff didn't, right? The health stuff manifested when I was like an adult, basically. But the career stuff and the money stuff was programming from a very, very young age. So I realized that I had all these feelings of feeling unseen and scared to be vulnerable and scared to be judged based off of my childhood experiences. Also, like, scarcity and lack around money and around doing your own thing. No one should really be expansive around me in terms of like entrepreneurship or business or art.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And it was another kind of puzzle piece for me of like, this is why the career thing has been so hard for me, and the health stuff I could just meditate my way to health, and I couldn't meditate my way to success, right? Or like my dream career. Um, yeah, so I have a practice now where I really try to get to the root of where that fear is coming from. And a lot of the times it's coming from like a version of my inner child, right? And that's where I have to do the rewiring. And that's where I have to, bring in the new frequency or like bring in a new energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we addressed your exact initial question, but I felt like that would give more background as to like
No,
where,
that was
yeah.
perfect. Can you tell us a bit about your like how you rewire, how you really rewire, how you go down to those subconscious programs and meditations and then rewire them into something like to release them or just like to have a better program running in the future? How do you do
Yeah.
that?
So I do a lot of journaling around that. So there's a couple of like prompts that I usually do. First, it's like let yourself feel the emotion, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
bypassing is so easy these days. If you feel uncomfortable and then you immediately go to your phone, you go to your TV, you go to do something to avoid it, you're never going to let that emotion surface and release from yourself. So I think the first step is always just to let yourself fully immerse in that emotion and not try to avoid it. Because that's where most people stop. They feel something uncomfortable and they're like, oh my God, I can't handle this. Like, I'm going to go do something that makes me feel better. Um, but I think it's important to feel it so you can release it. So I let myself feel it. And then I ask myself, okay, how am I feeling on a scale of 1 to 10? What is the emotion, right? And if it's below like a 6, then I ask myself, is this stemming from something that I'm worrying about in the future, or something from the past? And usually it's a combination of both, because you'll discover
Mm-hmm.
that um, you are worrying or stressing about something in the future, right? Let's say it's like making money or finding this new apartment or whatever it is. But it also stems from a pattern or memory of the past. Let's say, like, when you're young, like financial crisis and your parents like didn't have the money, or like, they were struggling to find like some like a place to stay at or something like that. It doesn't even have to be that dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'll just give you an example from my childhood of like, for a long time, I was just like, where does this like fear and this unworthiness come from? And it's like also like all these triggers, or especially around my parents. And I realized that it was when I was really young and I was like 5. Um, I just felt really unseen because my parents were just really busy, and there's a specific time I had like a headache, and then my parents like were just like, here, take these like meds and you'll be fine. Um, and I just like felt so unseen in that moment, and that was a pattern that kept me like feeling unworthy and unable to express myself, not just around my parents, but I think in general, like around like on social media and all that kind of stuff. And that was like mind blowing for me to realize that experience. Um, a lot of times it's not even that specific, right? If like a random memory might pop up, or like a random thought might pop up, and your subconscious will always show you what you need to process in that moment. And then in that moment, I rewire it by essentially what I always do, and there's different ways to do this, but I always bring in my higher self and my present self to my past self. And whatever I needed in the past to feel safe, I give it to my inner child at that point.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's like, it's basically kind of like a, I guess, like a subconscious hypnosis slash meditation technique. But I think the key is that you need to do it whenever the emotion comes up. So another thing that I think a lot of spiritual people do is like they'll meditate in the morning, right? And then, you know what Dr. Joe says, like they'll go unconscious during the day. And you honestly have to catch that so much and like retrain your mind in the moment and retrain your body in the moment. Um, because that's the thing that's going to create a lasting impact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That is actually when you can change truly, if you catch yourself and then make a different choice or just tend to that emotion or feeling and just rewire it. Wow, thank you. So now that where are you currently right now? At what stage? Well, I'm not sure if this is the correct word, but you have overcome obviously already the biggest hurdle, and that is like starting your new dream career. And how do you keep yourself in check right now? Or maybe you just can. We've been talking about how you felt burned out, and maybe you can tell us more about the development that has been taking place ever since then to now, where you're now.
Yeah. So I'll continue that story. So
Yes, please.
I had so much anxiety around this project, right? I was really burned out, really just like, wow, this anxiety is stopping me from exhibiting to like a couple of hundred people. What if I exhibited to thousands or even millions, or like shared my voice with millions, right? I knew that worthiness was the thing that was stopping me from going bigger. So, I really dug into all that subconscious rewiring work. That's when I learned about shadow work too, which was like mind blowing for me. And I did that work on myself. And then when I exhibited the project in the summer, which by the way, I finished on time, I finished ahead of time. People were like,
Cool.
my colleagues were like, wow, I can't believe you finished like ahead of time and like you don't have any technical issues. And it was just like so funny because it gave me so much perspective on like this perfectionist version of myself that had lived so scared of like not delivering, right, or of like disappointing people. And I remember like, even the first person who stepped into my exhibit and tried my thing, I almost didn't want to give them like the VR headset because I was like, oh god, like someone's gonna see my project.
Mm,
And there was a lot of emotion to overcome in that moment for sure, but like obviously I committed to it, so I had to do it anyways. So, and then like people freaking loved that project. Like so many people told me it was like their favorite project, the entire exhibition, like their favorite
wow.
VR project ever. Yeah, like feedback I honestly did not imagine. Like I thought it would be like cool project, like good job. But it's like it was just so beautiful hearing people like how much they resonated with my message, how healing it was for them. some of like the staff that work there, they were even like, yeah, I want to like do this every morning because it just like it's really helping me reset my day. Um,
Wow.
for context, it was kind of like it was like a poetic, I suppose, augmented reality slash virtual reality experience. Um, so I had my voice in it, I had my poetry about it, but it was all about rest and worthiness, which, was the Medium articles that I wrote the year before. So I was like, holy crap, this is lighting me up. Um, and at the same time, I was learning more about like values, purpose, and whatever. And I was like, this is my purpose. This is how I want to feel. Because actually, making that project was brutal for me. Like coding it, being on the computer 8 hours a day, that was brutal for me. But seeing people's reactions to it was absolutely amazing. And I'm like, how do I just directly get to the root of this? Like, why am I in VR to do personal development? Like, that makes no sense, right? But I had just like built up this crazy identity of me, like just being an artist, I think. Um, and I wasn't like letting that go a little bit. And I'm not saying that art
Mm,
has no place in my life at all, because I absolutely don't think that's true. But I also think I was avoiding the thing that I really wanted to do, which was just like teach
mm,
people, um, talk about how people are worthy at their very core and teach people how to feel that way, and move
mm,
forward in their life, like I was doing in that moment. After that, after that, my residency had ended. I also had like a part-time job that was ending, and I was like, okay, it's time to get serious about business because I don't want another 9 to 5. I'm very clear about that. Again, value of freedom becoming really clear to me, right? And then once I got into this mindset of like, I need to make a business work no matter what, like I started to understand so much information about what it really takes. And I think before I wasn't serious or honestly desperate enough to think about
mm,
that. But now that I was really serious about it, I learned about like marketing, right? I learned about like how to attract clients. Like I learned about all this kind of stuff. And I was really teetering on the lines of creative studio or something else. And um I did this exercise that I found on YouTube. It was like, I forgot what it was called, but basically it was like, what do you actually care about? Like, what's your next step as like a multi-passionate creative person? And then I did it, and everything on that was about writing. It was about personal development. It was about spirituality. It's about meditation. Like there was like two or three things around like gaming and art, and I was about to create an entire business based off of gaming and like gaming for social impact, but gaming and like technical art. And I was like, holy crap, I have no thoughts about this because it's not the thing that I actually care about. So it would be extremely difficult for me to do any marketing
mhm,
around it, right? Which is what I
mhm,
needed to do to have a successful business. And instead, I was like, wow, it would actually be so easy for me to do marketing around like a personal development business, which is like the first
mm,
thought that it came to mind was like coaching because I've been coached before and I was like, oh wait, actually like that would be so easy for me to talk about. And
mhm,
there's like all these little pieces coming in of like me feeling so lit up by just people telling me how much my art or my message impacted them. Having those Medium articles just flow out of me effortlessly. I actually tried launching a course like 2 years prior, but felt too scared to do it. And I was like, oh wow, I wanted to do this for 2 years already. But I never went down that path because of the fear. Um, so all these pieces were coming together, and then I came at a point where I was like, okay, I need to decide. Because after our exhibit, I started writing my newsletter regularly. I taught 2 workshops at NYU, which again, I had to decide if it was gaming or personal development. I ended up choosing personal development. And again, people were like, this is amazing. You please, like, let me join your newsletter. Like, this is so helpful. Um, I was like, okay, this is such another sign for me to do it. Right.
mhm,
Uh, and then I was like, am I serious about this? Like, am I going to make this happen? And through a synchronicity, I happened to have a lead on a client. So I hopped on a call with them and essentially tried to sell my coaching. And it totally did not work, totally failed. like worst sales call ever. And I was like, wow, I like have no idea what I'm fucking doing, you know? So at this point, I was like, if I'm serious about this, I put my money where my mouth is, and then I figure out how to do this, like without trying to do it myself, because I have zero knowledge and information on what I should be doing. And of course, I'm getting Instagram ads on this, all these like business programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I commit, and then I join a program, and I literally like land my first high ticket client like 2 or 3 weeks later. And
Wow.
yeah, it's just crazy. And then that whole month was just crazy for me. Like, I think also because at the same time that I decided I was going to be a coach, I already knew that I wanted to move this summer, but I was planning to move to Mexico City because I had a limiting belief around where I had to be in terms of time zone. Now that I was choosing my freedom lifestyle and this new business, I could work wherever I want. So I was like, it's always been a dream of mine to live in Bali. So here I am in Bali.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I was like, and it's funny because one of my best friends, I was telling her about Mexico City, and she was like, "Why are you in Mexico City? Like that really doesn't seem like you. You should go to Bali instead." And I like did a double take. I was like, "Holy shit, you're right." You know? And it's like sometimes it's so easy for other people to see these things, but like you can't see them because you, of course, you have
Mm-hmm.
programs in place. Um, but I kept thinking about that. And like by the time that she was sending me off to the airport, I was like, yeah, I looked into tickets to Bali. Like I think I might actually go. And then I booked my tickets a
Amazing.
week later. Yeah, so it's like all these actions, and I think a lot of times we think of actions as like quote work, but it's so
Mm-hmm.
much more than that. It's like it's literally stepping up to be the version of our future selves. And I like in that moment I knew my future self would not be limited to time zone, right? Wouldn't have that limiting belief. I knew my future self like wouldn't hesitate to invest in herself to push her business further or like figure out what the learning gap is or what the skill gap is in creating a business. So all these actions, they're not work per se, but like they're things that are definitely scary and that you take anyways to up level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's really inspiring. Like it's when you told some things and I was imagining being in your shoes, like wow, that's really powerful. Like especially making different choices when your body, I think the hardest sometimes is like really making different choices, even when you're in like experiencing full-blown fear.
Mm.
And fear is something not only in your mind, but it can be also very physical in your body. It can express itself like as pain or like you were doing the exhibition anyways, because you knew you had to, even if it turned out not to be the thing that you wanted to do in the future, but you still did it anyways because you knew like you have to overcome something. So that is really, really inspiring. And then how did your was your emotional roller coaster? Like, let's have a closer look at your emotions during all this time. How was that? Are you now probably because you're following your purpose more grounded and you're feeling more content with you anyways, but how keeping up that new self despite all of what is happening around you and also keeping the emotion of your future. How has this journey been? Like, even in your meditations, from a scale from, I don't know, doubting everything until really actually believing you can do it. So maybe you can tell a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that's like the beauty of commitment, right? Which I didn't have for a long time. I never really committed to one thing. And I think like if I look at really successful people, they have committed to a certain thing for at least, a relatively long time frame. So just to give you an example, like last fall, I was doing so many different like projects. Like I did this like wellness room, then I did this like game for kids, and then I did this like another meditation game, and then I had like my job and I had residency and all this stuff, and there was just zero commitment. anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like when I bring it back to the purpose of like, once you find that thing that lights you up and you know what you need to do in that moment, it lifts up a cloud for sure. Like the moment I invested into that business program, I felt this like sigh of relief because finally I had decided to really do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely not to say that there are any doubts in the way. I think especially when it comes to fear, take things step by step. So I didn't immediately, do all these things. Like I'm doing all these calls right now. I'm like posting like twice a day on social media. Like it's a lot, but it's easy for me now because first I did my newsletter only once a week. That's the only thing I committed to. So I was like, I can commit to posting my newsletter once a week for a month, right? And I did that, and I was like, I really love this. So this is another clue, a little nugget for me to follow. And then
Mm-hmm.
after that, and by the way, it was very uncomfortable for me to promote my newsletter on my Instagram. Like literally, as you said, I had this like queasy feeling in my stomach, like, and even after I posted, I like, whenever I thought about it, I'd be like, oh my god, that's like so much for me to like feel. But it's like almost like exposure therapy. I was like, I committed to this. I know this is why I want to do so, and I know that this program of fear is keeping me in place. Okay, I acknowledge you, fear. I'm gonna do it anyways, right? So I posted it anyways, and lo and behold, by the time I posted my fourth newsletter, that fear just it wasn't as big. It was like, maybe 5% of what it was before. And that
Mm-hmm.
actually made me doing the thing so much easier because the
Mm-hmm.
fear plays into the overthinking. The fear plays into the amount of stress and time it takes to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then at that point, I was like ready to commit to something a little more. So a live workshop, right? Again, I did two of these. First time, again, really scared. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing? And then I did it. I didn't die. I was fine. People liked it. I was like, oh, that was actually wasn't too hard. And then the next one, I like pushed myself a little bit more, right? I was like, I'm gonna prepare. I'm not going to put too much on the slides. I'm going to prepare less
Mm-hmm.
and then see how I feel. So I'm like pushing myself all these times. And you can actually do this in your life in other ways too. So I would start doing things that would literally make me feel embarrassed. So for example, yeah, because I knew this emotion was getting in my way. So like my friend and I were playing pickleball in New York, and they have this thing called the Challengers Court, which is basically like the top people in the neighborhood go and play there. And then I was like, yo, let's play on the Challengers Court. We get destroyed by like this 13-year-old. Literally, he gives us the most apathetic, like, you suck look ever. And it was really embarrassing. And then I was like, okay, let's go play on it again. Right? So it's like I was intentionally putting myself in these places because I suddenly realized that I needed to lean into this fear. That it was like a
Mm-hmm.
fake thing I was projecting, right? Like, let's go back to the art project. For 2 months, I was tortured inside with anxiety and fear, only to realize it was all a fake projection because people loved my project and I finished it on time and it was amazing. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that just told me so much about my psyche versus like my actual skills and abilities. And I think that plays so much into career because a lot of times people are always questioning if they're good enough, if they're skilled enough, right? If they're talented enough, whatever. It's like, yes, you freaking are. You're just not embodying the fact that you are. Like you have this like literally a fake perception of yourself that like you're not good enough or that you're gonna struggle in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That sounds powerful. I love that you put your out there like intentionally to simply overcome the fears. That sounds amazing. Wow.
Yeah, and I still do it every day. Like basically, just like 1 or 2 weeks ago, I've been wanting to post every day for maybe 2 months. Finally, 2 weeks ago, I did it. And
Mhm.
then I was like, that actually was kind of easy. Again, something I was scared to commit to before, but now I did it. And now I was like, what have I posted? I felt called to post like twice a day, and it was really uncomfortable for me. all the thoughts came of like, oh, do people think I'm annoying? Is this content good? Like,
Mm,
am I even bringing anything valuable? It's like the same freaking pattern, right? And
mm-hmm,
I just like,
mm-hmm,
you just need to be so clear about that pattern and how it's stopping you, how it's stopping you from committing, how it's stopping you from taking action, how it's stopping you from like anything. And like the perspective I have now is like, I don't even care about the results. Like, I just need to fucking do the thing. Like, I just need to get over like these fears and get over myself and get over this like part of my brain that thinks everything is just gonna fall apart. And I think I still do the meditation, I still do the rewiring stuff, right? But at the end of the day, like, will you keep going when you're not even feeling great, right? Will you keep
mm-hmm,
going for the sake of doing, for the sake of showing up for yourself?
mm-hmm.
And I think that makes the whole process more meaningful than like, oh yeah, I'm just applying to a job, or like, oh yeah, I'm just like posting on Instagram. Like, who even cares? It's like, no, show up for yourself. Like, do it because it means something to you if you stay consistent.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some like in those moments also some new thoughts that you changed towards too? Like what are because you need something new also to rely on, like new thoughts and new beliefs, and what are the new beliefs that you have integrated in those moments, like no, I can do anything I want to, or everything is possible to me, or um I don't know, opportunities find me, or like I'm good at it. Like what thoughts or beliefs did you implement to carry your future?
Yeah, so I love that question. I honestly think like the 3D and the 5D work hand in hand, right? So a lot of times people think they need to fully embody the belief before they can do anything. And I think that's a total trap. I think you need to believe that that belief is possible for you. Like, be aware of the new belief, right? But you're still going to feel your old self and your old belief tugging at you. And
Mm,
I personally think in order to embody your future self, you have to do the thing of the new belief anyways, right? So, for example, like coaching, right? At first, I definitely had this belief of like, am I qualified to coach? You know, and like when I, before I signed up for that program, I literally emailed him and I was like, hey, I have a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, you know, like I don't feel successful as an artist. And am I qualified to like coach people? And then he just had this like best answer ever. He was like, actually, like you just need to be one or two steps ahead of someone, and then you're the person that someone else needs, right? They A lot of people, they don't want someone who's like 20 steps ahead of them because they can't relate. And I was like,
yeah.
wow, you're so right. He just like reframed my mindset. And like that belief is definitely shifting, but I think there's still a hint of it there, right? But guess what? Through action is changing. Like literally, I had a call with someone a few days ago, and we were talking about my program, and then he just gave me this like a most amazing testimonial ever of
Oh.
like just like, and it wasn't even, it was like kind of a coaching call, but he was like yeah, just like let me like ask me some questions. I'll just like write all this out, and then his belief in me as a coach was so strong. And I was like, if I never took the action to do this call, I would never gotten that testimonial. And I never
Mm,
would have embodied this belief in myself as a coach even more. Right.
mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's
Wow.
all hand in hand. Like, yes, I'm constantly, because I think, like, you know, if I 100% doubted myself, like, I wouldn't be able to coach anyone at all. Like, I wouldn't be able to put myself out there. I think that's what I mean. Um, but if I don't take the action, then like, then you'll never truly begin to see that in this 3D reality. Because it's like, how do you know you're a good coach? You coach someone, right? How do you get better at coaching? You coach people. So it's like, there's like this whole like mind fuck that happens that like, you know, puts you in a very like unhelpful cycle, I would say, if you don't take action.
Mm. Oh, yes. Wow. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, on a level, if you don't take action, then you don't really believe that you can do. So it's not like you have to do massive, unrealistic. Like it's not like you have to do something super big, like these small actions and setting up your business account. So how long it took me to do my first podcast episode. It took me, I don't know, months because I was like pondering about this idea and like, maybe I'm just like wanting to be someone special, and I had to come up against all these things, and then I was like, oh my gosh, Anne-Sophie, just do it. Like just fucking do it. Like why not? You're
Yeah.
watching podcasts and it helps you, so there might be a possibility that it helps someone else. And if you had this dream, then you're highly likely meant to do it. And if it turns out that it's something that you do not want to do, at least you know then. At least you have a new experience and you did it. But it took me quite a while, and it was like your mind is just like sometimes the weirdest thing ever when it comes to really going for something new, because it really just wants to keep you in the now, even if it's not safe. Like
Mm.
that is, I think, something that I realized big times, also in the current situation. You rather want to freeze, or just you rather want to stay in your known familiar environment, and it throws all these confusing stories at your head, instead of doing something new and just honestly believing in yourself and taking new actions. Like the mind is really something that is worth investing in and to get control, or just like like understanding it more. If you know yourself, you can also change more. So that is amazing. It's a never ending, never ending journey.
Yeah, and
It,
I love that.
yeah.
And
It,
I think it also gets a lot easier, right?
mm,
If you're aware of that pattern. And like I also think it's different for everyone. So it's like, yes, give yourself grace and start, because consistency also is a skill in a lot of ways. Like I have a client that I'm working with right now, and it's like she's just starting with the inner work, but being consistent with that, right? And like
mm-hmm,
a lot of people have trouble like, meditating every day. And it's like first just pick something to be consistent with, because then that'll
mm-hmm,
gain you confidence. If you say you'll do something, you actually do it. And then from there,
yeah,
you can build on. Versus like you immediately think of this giant goal, right? Like if a couple of months ago I was like, yeah, I'm going to post 3 reels a day, I would have been like, holy shit, this is so overwhelming. But now it's like so easy to me. Like I can just like write them like boom, boom, boom. Um,
mm-hmm,
so I think it's like, yeah, give yourself grace, practice consistency, and also the whole key to manifestation and quantum leaping is that you close that gap between the thought and then the action. And I
mm-hmm,
see this a lot in really successful people. They just like think it and then they do it, and there's no sort of like hesitation in between. And I think that it's really a muscle that you have to practice.
yeah, definitely. Wow, cool. And something that I'm personally interested in, when you have moment, of course, like you practice everything and it gets easier. But let's say at the beginning of your journey, when you really had all this anxiety and did it anyways, like how did this anxiety for you show up and how did you deal? Because at least for me, it shows up as a lot of pain and stiffness. And sometimes it can be very, very overwhelming to a point where I'm like, it's getting worse. Maybe I need to retreat for a second. So I'm wondering how it is for you, or like how it was for you, how you dealt with the very physical sensation of anxiety, and also how you overcome that. Because when it starts, you might be thinking, "Oh no, I'm getting worse," or something like this. So especially in your burnout area, I could imagine it was also like maybe a two-sided, so like a very line, like not getting burned out again, but on the other side also just proving to yourself that you can do it and that you're worthy of going to this exhibition and everything. So maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, totally. I will say that like when you're in your purpose and feeling very aligned with what you do, it burnout is a lot less likely. So all the times I was feeling burned out before is because I was doing this like coding stuff, all the stuff that was like I was not really it wasn't part of my I say my core set of gifts, right? Even though I was good at it. So it's a little confusing, but it wasn't part of my core set of gifts. Because like things like writing and content creation literally come super easy to me because it's every thought that passes through my head. Like I'm literally giving like motivational speeches in my head all the time.
Hmm.
I'm a little weird, but it's like so true. So I think like also figuring what that is for you, right? Like what brings you energy. Again, like another thing that really brought me energy was being with people. But I was choosing stuff where I was on the computer 24/7 and I wasn't, interacting with anyone.
Mm.
So in that way, you can like start to change your life a little bit and move you towards things that do give you more energy, which in turn will help you when you're trying to like create something, right? So I
Hmm.
think that's the first part. It's like always getting clear on your purpose, on your values, what really matters to you, what nourishes your soul and what gives you energy. And the other one is like I think there's a lot of like, nervous system regulation techniques. The ones that I use are mostly meditation, tapping, like dance, physical movement. I think those are all great. So I would use those to whatever extent it works for you. But, but the part of you that feels like it's dying with anxiety, that's literally like a reaction. I read in this book once about an experiment with rats where basically this book was about like neurological chronic pain, right? And basically
Hmm.
how in this experiment with rats, they would give the rats a pellet every time they push a button, and then they would stop. Then they would stop it. They would like stop having a pellet fall out when they push the button. And then these rats would like go crazy and push this button like crazy until the behavior finally died. So it's the same with your anxiety. It's the same with your fear. It's the same with all the thoughts. Like it will go crazy for a moment, right? And then in this book, it was talking about pain specifically of how the pain will really act up before you break that sort of like neurological link. But it's the same for the anxiety, right? Like it's really gonna act up. It really wants you to
Hmm.
stay the same. But like you gotta break the link by doing the thing anyways. And look, I felt nauseous, I felt sick, like doing some of these things. Like literally this exhibit, I did not want to do it. I was like, why did I sign up for this exhibit? Why did I join this residency? This was a total mistake. Like all these things. But because I committed to it, like I had to do it anyways, which is the amazing thing about commitment. Um, and guess what? I didn't die, right? I wasn't like shamed by my community. Like all these things, it's like it's all a trick by your body and your mind that's trying to keep you
Hmm.
in the past reality. So I think like
Mm.
while there's all these tools to regulate, there's all these amazing tools to regulate your nervous system. Um, at some point, if you really want to make it, like you got to take that step forward. Like that's the
Hmm.
way to embody it in this new reality. And where a lot of people get stuck is like, oh, I need to feel perfectly serene and really joyful
Oh, yeah.
and like take this action. It's like, no, I need to feel good about it first, or like I need to feel good first, then I need to do the thing. Um, and it's like, no, actually, it's kind of the reverse, honestly.
It's true
Yeah.
though. I mean, if you never take a new action, then you also never get a new experience. That thought that you have to feel good first is like really misleading. Because then, like you said, you stay the same. And if you just like die beforehand and like, and you just do it anyways, and then you have a new experience and like, oh damn, that wasn't that bad.
Yeah. And I think going through that, it literally actually changed like my entire timeline. Because every time I had that feeling come up again, I could reference that project, right? I could directly reference like, oh, I felt like I was gonna die. Actually, there's an amazing outcome from that. Okay, now I
Mm,
feel like I'm gonna die again in a similar feeling. There's probably an amazing outcome on the other side of this. So it's like it got
wow.
easier because I had that point of reference.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so incredible much for talking and like exploring all these things with us that we were able to go with you on this journey. That was really, really amazing. Like I could talk hours with you, but I just also got a notification that my external IT service, they can kind of control my computer. So it says, yep, we're gonna turn you off in a few minutes and then have a restart. So they do some, I don't know, a service, external service. So I just took this as the perfect point to end this conversation. And thank you so much. Do you have maybe a few words where people can find you in your coaching? Of course, I'm going to link everything down below. You're going to be in amazing hands. I'm so looking forward for my coaching session with you. And I just know I will get a lot out of it. So, yeah, maybe a few words where people can find you and something that you really want to, like how you want to serve them.
Ooh, yes. Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at ai.mi.xia or my website at www.aimixia.com. Um, yeah, I just like I've been through all these struggles, and for years I was just frustrated because I saw people manifest, and I'm like, how the fuck are you doing this? So I think for those who are struggling with fear, who do feel a block, who feel the block but know that they're here for something greater and really want to move past that and they're like ready to go, like I'm here 100% to serve you and help you move forward with that. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you who watched this episode, for venturing with us into the unknown on Ice Journey. And I see you in the next episode. Bye.